for a very new one-to-one initiative. So it's really very overwhelming and a lot to accomplish for those 3 people. So we'd like to be able to hire 2 additional tech staff and assign them again to the schools. They would not be district employees. We do need to improve our communication skills. We need, Krista right now is the one updating the website. I'd like to consider hiring a part-time webmaster that could also help us with social media and other information that needs to go out on a more regular basis. LCD projectors for classroom instruction. Our new teacher devices struggle with our very old technology, both projectors as well as the interactive whiteboards. So we do have to, or should, think about replacing those. We're replacing them a little at a time, but not at a fast enough pace to make a difference for our staff. And then we do need Chromebook cards for each of our classrooms. For social emotional, we want to continue with the implementation of Panorama, continue with staff implementation and coaching for Pbis, obtain staff for effective programs and practices in assisting students in obtain training, for our staff for school level SEL and mental health. And then tier 2 and 3 intervention materials for social emotional learning. And then last was the staffing, custodians, yes, PE teacher at McDowell Mountain. So this was a summary from some of the other items. 2 instructional coaches for 2 years, 2 technology specialists for 2 years, a behavior interventionist for 2 years that can help us with some of the behaviors that we're seeing that we really do. And it's not that staff that needs assistance, it's our students that need this assistance. And then we have thought about an assessment and data specialist to work with the school sites and instructional coaches and the Pbis coach, and that person would also be assigned to the school sites. We would continue the stipends for staffing to assist with Fountain Hills Virtual Academy facilitation. Right now we do pay them out of ESSER 2, and we'd like to continue that funding for all of our staff because now they're all uploading videos and really trying to keep schools PLP up and ready for students that are absent and in case we have any other health emergencies. And then as I shared with you, like a 0.5 webmaster for 2 years to increase the communication with stakeholders, managing all social media, new district and school site websites, and assisting with consistent communication. So with that was all that I had, and I wanted to get your feedback or thoughts or ideas so that, because I have to write this grant in the next 2 weeks and get it submitted. We aren't behind. We have until February to allocate the money and apply for the grant. But we haven't really, because we've made the best use of ESSER 1 and 2, had a significant need to apply for ESSER 3 at that time. So we chose to just take our time and use the funds that we had. And now we're ready to apply for ESSER 3.
Have you looked at the pricing of monitors as opposed to projectors in classrooms? We switched.
We do have those in some of our classrooms, particularly our math classrooms, and they really do like them. I can bring that up with Dennis to make sure that we cover that.
That was part of the reason when we updated this room, we took down the projector and went with the monitors.
Right.
Right, especially if you're in small print like we just saw, you can't see it on a monitor, but you, I mean,
On a projector, it gets washed out very easily,
Mhm.
but yeah, you get better quality image from the monitor.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
I'd like to see, I mean, really thinking about the whole child holistically. I mean, we have, physical support, we have academic support, we have workforce development support, also known as SEL, and then mental health support, because we are seeing a lot of behavior issues, as are many schools across. And when you have teachers, even with 22 kids in the classroom, one disruption is really disruption in the educational learning of all kids. So I think that I really like that strategy, and I like the academic approach, power hour, other opportunities. IXL, I mean, I don't know if every student has access to that, do they?
They do.
Okay, send a note out to parents, because I will put my kids on IXL. I definitely think knowing that it's a resource is appreciated, because I mean, there was a great loss of learning last year.
Right.
No fault of teachers,
No.
I mean, they work their butts off, but kids need to learn in person, with their hands, talking to people. So I think it looks really great to me. I love, again, the holistic approach.
And I included staffing in there, but they're not teachers. We have funding for teachers. It's these other positions that will support our staff and provide them with more support that we need. I have in the budget, plenty of money for teachers. I have no money for instructional coaches. I have no money for a behavior interventionist. So those are things that are going to provide additional support for our teachers.
And right now, a lot of that need is more of a remediation need because of kids not being in the classrooms and getting what they needed, and because we've thrown at our teachers a lot of different physical technology as well as new applications and new kind of like processes around utilizing technology without giving them a lot of training and support. I mean, they get some initial training, but they might need more support than that to carry them through as they teach throughout a school year. So I think the instructional coaches will help give them different ideas for how to use the technology that they've been given, and also hopefully support them in using that technology just to understand how to use the tool.
One of the things that was mentioned was the power hour at Fountain Hills High School. We have power hour. Is that not being utilized properly?
Yes, there is. I am not sure, and maybe Mr. Alexander, do you mind speaking to it? That we follow, it's not a national model, but it's a kind of a national model on Power Hour that has provided a lot of success for students. But Mr. Alexander can speak to that.
I think to Dr. Glass's point, last year I heard a lot of feedback from our coaches, like they're more than happy to run Power Hour. But what they would see is, like, especially with our larger teams, like take football for example, you have almost 40 kids out playing. You've got such a large range of needs when you have 40 kids. It's really hard to say, okay, which ones need reteach, which ones need enrichment, because all the reteach kids, they're going to their classrooms. They're going in meeting with their teachers, but what about the enrichment kids? And sometimes and I think IXL is helping with that this year, because we can differentiate very easily. IXL breaks it down for them, teacher by teacher, so the teachers can really focus on the differentiation of the needs, so they can meet the kids exactly where they're at. But one of the things that the coaches were talking about, you know, we have coaches that are not on our campus, they're not teachers.
Right.
And so they don't understand it, and so to ask them to possibly run like quote-unquote enrichment, that's not gonna get it done. So I think some of the conversations were around, can we hire, you know, someone to come in to run power hour for our student athletes during that time period?
Well, and I just want to make sure that Power Hour is still sports free. That, you know, when this was implemented about 5 years ago, there was absolutely no sports to be done unless it was games during Power Hour. So kids weren't torn about, well, I can't attend practice because I have to go to reteach. I just want to make sure that's still implemented, that it literally, like, there's no sports unless it's games until 3:20 in the afternoon. Is that still correct?
We did have that issue last year with one particular coach, but I feel like everybody else followed the agreement to not have any practice during Power Hour. We did have one issue.
Yeah, because that's, you know, that was implemented when Power Hour was implemented. It's, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, a rule, a mandate, whatever. But unless they have a game, we don't get to dictate to AIA when games start and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, you can't put kids in a position of, you know, do I go to practice? Do I go to reteach? If I go to reteach, am I going to be, am I going to be penalized by the coach because I'm not at practice when they wanted me at practice? So, you know, that's, especially if we're looking at utilizing that even more, that we're hiring somebody, like, I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So, yeah.
It doesn't happen with football or basketball, I can attest.
So our coaches were very supportive of it and actually preferred that because they understand how that helps them get their kids back on the playing field.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for everybody, right? Like, they understand the importance of it, and I think that the coaches, they really stress that student athlete part. Student comes first for a reason. And so there's quite a bit of buy-in on that aspect. So,
Good.
but to Dr. Glass's point, there was one instance where we had to have some conversations with a very small group of coaches last year about that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And I'm loving that reteach is back. It's good stuff. Good stuff. I agree, it is good stuff.
You know that COVID spawned a lot of technology use that,
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of switching where it makes sense from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side, and also the flipped classroom. And both of those, flipped classroom definitely was moved forward during the pandemic years, but and I use the guide on the side. I've got 2 TAs that were last year's seniors that do most of the direct contact teaching and do it really, really well. We're getting better every day. And my job, I've got 2 classes, so I've got a lot of prep to do. We've never done these programs before either, so we're developing as we run. But I really think supporting faculty with technology is a big deal. The flipped classroom has really made a difference nationally and internationally, quite frankly. With technology we have today, where students have computers at home, in almost every case, and we can provide them what they're missing. They can get a lot of the lecture and that kind of direct instruction before they come to class, so they get deeper into the subject matter when they're in class and through communication amongst students and other projects that we put together. That's growing and working, and the data shows, and it's limited data in the last couple of years, but what's being put out there is amazing. So I think your suggestion about adding more support staff is a good one. I mean, teachers can only do so much, and they're really better at putting together the curriculum that's needed for those students in their class.
Yes.
But having to do that and direct instruction for 20 or 30 students is almost the hardest thing they do. So I like my TAs. I wouldn't give them up. They're paid less than McDonald's, but it's on the resume. That's my sales pitch. And it is. I mean, it's a big deal in our industry, especially. But something to look at. to reallocate some of the resources to make sure we're maximizing the time that the kids spend in school.
Absolutely. Any other comments about the ESSER presentation?
No, thank you for putting it together. It's always wonderful to see true blue statistics, you know, to make decisions where, you know, what people really want, who answered the survey. And there was no in between. I think I said this at the last meeting. It was pretty obvious, like, you know, the top choices
Yeah.
were the top choices.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
appreciate
And we really are trying to take those suggestions and make sure that we implement them. So I was really happy with receiving the feedback. It was nice. It's better than writing a grant all by yourself.
And the next item we have is the board report follow-up regarding prioritization of projects.
I received this list from John, and John was more than willing to come tonight, but because I forgot to ask him, I said that I would take this on myself. So John provided me a list of 10 priorities, and these priorities do not include 2 buildings that, and I'll explain to you why, it did not include 4 Peaks. It includes the high school and the middle school, but not McDowell Mountain. If we were to repair and replace everything at McDowell Mountain, it's going to require a bond that's going to be quite extensive. It's going to cost us more to repair McDowell Mountain than it will both the high school and the middle school together. So John put together these priorities, and so the first 7, we would first pursue school facilities board. And so that is a replacement of all the high school roofs, weatherization of the buildings at the high school, replace the exterior doors at the high school. At the middle school, we would look at replacing the air conditioning, the roof on all buildings, dismantle that cooling tower, and then weatherization at all the buildings. So these 7 projects also would qualify for energy cost savings. So they would be the projects that would give us the most bang for our buck, but it would also be the best in order to remediate those needs that Gordian found as priorities. The last 3 are the high school and the middle school LED lighting projects. And we would look at doing a utility rebate on that, where our cost savings pay for our funding for the LED lighting. In one of my previous districts, we did that, and actually it was a significant benefit for us. And then the last is, number 10 is perimeter security. So those were the 10 projects that he identified as
The priority?
yes.
So for
from
the
Gordian.
perimeter security, that would be at the high school, the middle school, and then the district offices, or?
Yes,
Okay.
and it won't be at the transportation facility, because right now we're piloting a system over there so that we can see how it'll work, but it's the use of key cards
Okay,
and other systems to improve security in our facilities.
okay, so it's primarily key cards and like entry exit type of thing?
Mhm.
Does it involve any like cameras?
It could
that kind of
involve,
thing as
yes,
well,
it
or-
could involve cameras, it could involve, other, I'm just trying to remember, John told me these things on the way to another meeting, so, it's cameras, it's, the entry, there's one other thing, and I apologize, lighting,
Oh, okay, that makes
security
sense,
lighting.
yeah, because when it's dark better lighting by entrances and exits and certain like dark corners. is
There are
good.
some areas on the campus that are really, I mean,
Yeah.
especially this campus, that are really dark.
So another question I have, sorry to like steal a bunch of the time. So with not including McDowell Mountain, because I know we've mentioned a couple times that we have to seriously look, because of the size of our student population, whether we need to continue to utilize that building or if we're going to essentially close that building and consolidate students within the two remaining school sites. That, if we do proceed with the consolidation, is not something that's going to happen overnight. So my question is, if we were to keep McDowell Mountain open, say, all next school year as well, before we were able to consolidate, are there any repairs that we would need to make so that we could still safely have students and staff in that building until we completed a consolidation effort?
So right now, we're working with school facilities to repair the roof.
Okay.
That has been on the school facilities board agenda for quite a while. So we are working with them to repair the roof. Are there some other, there probably are, yes, but I think that the security of the building is good.
Okay. I'm asking
don't
because
think-
obviously, depending, I mean, this is both a decision about what's best for, students and families, but also a budget decision, right? And so, if there are major things that would need to be done at a site for us to maintain it and keep it safe, and if we don't decide to prioritize in the budget, that obviously escalates consolidating sites.
Right. And the reason it didn't include Four Peaks is because John and I have been working on a pro forma to determine what it costs us to run that building versus what we bring in from the lease agreements, and then what it's going to cost us to repair that building. You close that building for a reason. The sewer lines on the west side of the building are not good. There are lots of struggles, and so we really have to think about, is that even a site that we want to keep remain open for the business accelerator? Because we still are responsible for that building. We're responsible for the upkeep and the inspections and everything else that takes place, that I feel like we want to make sure that we also consider how much that's going to cost us and take away from the education of students.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't include what it costs to operate those two buildings.
Correct, right, not at the moment.
Electrical,
Yes.
water and so forth. I'm a proponent of, sooner than later, making the decision in McDowell Mountain, because I think that funding that we would save, both in what we would have to do to maintain it, and putting a roof on for a year makes absolutely no sense. But using that money that we currently spend on that facility anywhere we want to, because that's what we're sitting on.
Right, it's our M&O money, and we
Yeah.
can do that.
And I think in terms of what our students' needs are, I'd rather put those in the classroom as opposed to, paying for a lot of money in electricity that, we don't really need. And we can't sell it without a vote of the public,
Correct,
but we can give it away to the right people.
yes, we can.
The issue about a charter school coming in and opening up their place here, I don't think has a lot of merit. They're out there, but, we're not a city or a town that's growing their young families, which is where charter schools go. So I really think it's imperative on us to make a decision here in the next month or two, so that we don't end up in the same problem we did with Four Peaks.
So I did ask John, and I know this is a topic for another time, because it's almost 6:30. If we chose to close that school, what's the time frame in us getting things moved properly and the building, whichever building we choose, outfitted properly? He says we're looking at least another year in that building.
Really?
To get things like playground
Right, you have to
equipment and
retrofit.
fencing and all kinds of things that we have to do for our preschool, for our littles, so
I think
as far as
preschool
bathrooms.
and kindergarten can be held somewhere else in town, we know where their locations are, that we could pick up either permanently or temporarily. But I really think we're throwing money away if we keep that all along open, and actually keep 4 Peaks. I mean, if somebody wants to buy it, we have to spend some time, that's not gonna happen tonight. It may not even pass. But getting rid of those 2 facilities would put more money into where we really, really need it.
Yes, I mean, I agree.
So I have 2 things. One, we did spend, I felt like we spent a lot of money a couple of years ago with security updates at all of
We
our
did.
sites. So now I'm a little concerned about what additional security, because we were under the impression that some of the things that are being talked about were already paid for. Like bulletproofing some glass and security
That's what
doors
was
and,
done.
okay.
Yeah.
In the
So
main
it's-
offices,
Okay,
But
so
this
it's
is
additional.
this
Yeah.
is,
Okay.
yeah, this is different. Those are, they are not inexpensive. So if we outfitted, which we did, the middle school, the elementary, the high school, and the district office, is probably quite pricey.
And then my other thing is consolidating into the 2 schools, that would that free up that $750,000 that we won't be getting in capital? So maybe it was a sign?
No, not necessarily, because capital, capital pays for other things that we, will have to pay out of M&O for. So, no.
And we still have a whole year to
Yes.
hopefully
Yeah.
next year convince the voters that that money's really important. So I think that I agree, starting in January, you know, is something that needs to happen and hopefully people, we have better time to educate of where that money comes, what it is.
As far as consolidating, this campus was a junior high and high school campus, when we had the same enrollment. And we had McDowell and 4 Peaks, and we didn't have middle school. So based on what the capacity of the middle school is and high school, those 2 facilities could easily handle the numbers we're talking about.
Yeah.
In terms of the playground equipment, we moved the playground equipment from 4 Peaks over to the middle school when we made that transition. But I would like to hear more about why John thinks it's going to take a year to get the facilities moved. We did it a lot faster than that when we closed 4 Peaks, which.
But you didn't have to retrofit it for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. You have to retrofit the bathrooms, the playground. That playground
Well-
is not acceptable for
Oh, I agree.
kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. And so there, in the preschool, that it's a whole different ballgame than when you guys moved over, the older kids.
And I
So-
get that, but I'm just saying, that we're talking big dollars here, I mean, millions.
Sure.
And I want to make sure that every student has what they need, don't get me wrong, we're looking for what we can. But I think that money can be way more valuable in areas outside of facilities.
Well, and one thing you have to remember right now is builders, no matter who you use,
No, I get
can't
it.
get any parts. So it's to say, by August of next year, we're gonna have toilets for the little kids, playground for the little kids, everything that will accommodate
Bathrooms in
them.
the classrooms.
Like, I can't even get a heater right now for a pool customer because there aren't any. And that's, I think we're going to run into that for the next year to year and a half. And so I think it would be really difficult, even if we moved forward and made that decision, to find those things to retrofit.
Well, we don't know what they are, first of all, yet. I mean, we got an idea, but we don't have the details on what it's going to cost, what it's going to take to meet state requirements and so forth, to meet physical requirements of our students.
And
Yeah.
some of the playground equipment is probably too old.
To move,
It's-
yeah.
it-
So then it would
exactly.
be, yeah, a new
And
acquisition.
what is at the middle school is not age appropriate for preschool, preschool,
Right.
kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. The 3rd grade already played on that because when it was at 4 Peaks, 3rd grade was over there. When the 4th and 5th grade moved to the middle school, 3rd grade went to McDowell Mountain.
Right.
So it's fine for them, but it's preschool first and second that, in kindergarten, that you're gonna have a hard time, you know, that's where you've gotta retrofit everything.
I'd like to see it just a breakdown of costs. I get the whole situation we're in the industry, construction wise, but this is too important to just make that the reason we don't do something.
Any other discussion on this topic at this time?
No, but there was a lot of good discussion. Thank you, Dana, for a good discussion.
So that is the end of our work study session. We don't have a formal adjourn on the agenda, but then we do have a call to order for the business meeting, so I'll go ahead and call the business meeting to order. We also have approval of the agenda for the business meeting. I will go ahead and make that motion.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda for the business meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the first item on the agenda is our second public hearing on sex education and the sexuality curriculum. In order to conduct this public hearing, we do need to vote to suspend the regular meeting. I will go ahead and make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of voting to suspend the regular meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now in our public hearing. And Superintendent Glass, are you ready for us?
I hope so. Your mouth is again. Let me close that because I have it mirrored on both screens. So this is the same information that I shared with you a little over a month ago. And so we are required to have 2 public hearings. So I'm just going to share the information with you again. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
There's no other people here before, so they're like, could be heard. So this is the same information, but we did receive 1 public comment and review of the curriculum, and I summarized those comments in this document. So as you remember, the amendment takes effect on September 29th, 2021. For us to comply with the amendment to adopt and update the sex education curriculum, if we needed to, has to take place by December 15th. And we have to have a 60-day public comment and review of the curriculum, which is both available online and at the district office. We've had 1 person review the curriculum online and email us their feedback. No one providing feedback on the Google document, or no one that has come in to review the curriculum or the textbooks in the district office, except for Mrs. Rakowski.
I was gonna just say that. That's okay.
You're a health professional.
So I want to just take just a moment to review the course of study with you for both grades they're available again at the district office until December 4th. You can go to the FHUSD website, visit departments, and then select student services. And under student services is all of the documents that we had available for sex education, but not the textbooks. Again, the textbooks are physically available at the district office. There is a curriculum review feedback form, both online and in paper, if you come to the district office to review. And the final review information will be shared with the governing board on December 8th. So the requirements of the new law is that we provide human growth and that it prohibits sex education before grade 5. We provide human growth and development at grades 7 and 9. that age and grade appropriate classroom instruction on child assault awareness and abuse prevention is not prohibited, and that's provided at grade 9. Obtained, signed, written consent from a pupil's parent or guardian before providing sex education instruction. We do have an opt-in form that is required to be signed by the parents prior to instruction. We've had that for several years in this district. You saw the sample provided to you the last time. It's also included online and in the packet in the district office. And it also comes from policy IHAMB, Family Life Education, which is your governing board policy. We are to inform the pupil's parents or guardians of the right to review the instructional materials. This is also included in the opt-in form and in policy IHAMB, and we have to give them 2 weeks notice to come and view those materials. We are to notify parents and guardians 2 weeks prior to instruction for review and collection of the opt-in materials. And just as a reminder to you, we are not required to provide sex education. So the course of study and textbooks. The textbooks for Fountain Hills Middle School and Fountain Hills High School were adopted in 2016, December 2016, and are Essential Health with a copyright date of 2015, and Teen Health for the middle school with a copyright of 2009. And the course of study follows the Arizona standards that were adopted by the state board in 2010. So as you can see, here are the 7th grade course of study topics. These come directly from the standards. Day 1 is body changes, reproductive systems, and in these we use the textbook so that students have the information there in front of them. We do have some supplemental materials in the form of a workbook that were approved along with the textbook. Preparing for adulthood, partnership and relationships, Arizona law, sexually transmitted diseases, and refusal, skills, and decisions. And the freshman course of study is day 1 is sexually transmitted infections, unwanted sexual activity, and reproduction and pregnancy. And at the high school, these are not provided in 3 consecutive days, but at various days throughout the one particular quarter. And for the 7th grade students, it is a separation of boys and girls to provide this information. So our recommendation for this review is that we complete this 60-day review process and propose approval of the current course of study for the remainder of this year. Following this process, we'd like to establish a committee of teachers and parents to review the curriculum and program and suggest changes or improvements. We'll use other surrounding districts' course of study to compare. We'll review additional videos and materials that may be helpful for students, and we'll bring the suggestions and findings back to you toward the end of the year. And again, it requires another 60-day review process and 2 hearings to make any changes. So through the review and the last or the first hearing, it was suggested that we make sure that we have a healthcare professional on this committee. So I noted that. So there were 2 comments by one parent that indicated that they would hope that that there are still, I don't have my glasses on, other classes before 7th grade that teach concepts about health and sexuality, especially for girls because they mature faster, and that there should be some discussion about pregnancy earlier than 9th grade. So those were the suggestions that we would take to the committee for work.
Well, I was just looking at the 7th grade course of study, and they actually have a textbook, chapter 12, on the reproductive systems. So I would say that some of that would address pregnancy too, at that for reproductive systems.
Any other comments? This is a public hearing, so we are open to hear any comments or questions from the public specifically regarding the sex education and sexuality curriculum, if anybody has anything at this time. Hearing none, I will go ahead and move that we reconvene the regular meeting. Do we have a second for that motion?
I second it.
All those in favor of reconvening the regular meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And we are moving on to our regular scheduled programming, starting with informational reports, a summary of current events from Superintendent Glass.
So you had asked me last month what our current numbers for COVID were for both our staff and adults. At McDowell Mountain, I have 6 students, 5 adults. At the middle school, 9 students, 3 adults. And at the high school, 24 students and 4 adults. So I'll continue to update you with that.
Are those active cases right now or over the past month?
Over the, since the beginning of school.
Oh,
Okay.
since the beginning of school.
Yeah.
And those are obviously just what we're aware of, or
Correct.
like either self-reported or.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. So on the second one is that we were so lucky to host the Fountain Hills Leadership Academy here a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Barnard and Mrs. Jenkins came and spoke to the group in the morning. They got to tour the school sites, which they really enjoyed, and then they had lunch with our kids. So that was so much fun, and we really did enjoy having them here. They were a great group of people. And just a reminder that Grand Persons Day at McDowell Mountain is coming up, and we're so excited. We hope that you can join us and help us serve and see our
I'm already
families.
signed up.
Awesome. That's all I have for today.
and then what is our, it says
Governing board reports, like what you would do at the end.
Ah, I
Anything,
see.
do you have anything to report? You are.
I see. We'll go around. I don't have anything to report for this time. Mrs. Retkowski, do you have a governing board report?
Well, I actually looked at the 2 textbooks, the one for 7th
Yes.
grade, the one for 9th grade. I'm really impressed with them, and that small book too.
On abstinence.
That, what?
On abstinence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And looking and reading of all this stuff, it's really things that should be taught, you know. So I think it's a good program, good curriculum.
Good feedback. Thank you for reviewing this. Dr. Barnard.
Well, we attended the Leadership Academy
Yes.
breakfast.
That's right.
And football's over, so basketball has started, and Power Hour, since you brought it up, I think is great. Reteach is going strong, and it's really nice to see. I think that's all.
Mr. Sarr?
I'm glad we're still doing reteach.
Mrs. Reed?
I have no comments.
All right. So then moving on to other reports, we're starting with Stugo. So I think we have a couple at least Stugo representatives in
Might
the
have a lot of
us. You can come up. This is our temporary podium here. So welcome. If you can introduce yourselves and what grade you're representing.
I'm grade.
Yeah, I'll send it to you right
I'm
now.
supervisor president.
I'm Ruby, I'm student body president, senior.
I'm Gianna, I'm student body vice president.
I'm Oz, I'm social media relations. So our first event that's coming up is November 30th. We are doing, in the past we've done something called Buck Puff. That usually takes place during our homecoming dance, but we decided to do that a little bit earlier this year. And we're doing a co-ed volleyball tournament. It's $5 or $10 to play, and yeah, we seem to have a lot of kids interested, so that'll be fun.
So we're also doing something for Christmas. Basically, we're selling like candy. They're like candy canes, and they're $1 each. And basically, you buy one for someone, and you can like send a little note, and then we pass them out like at the end of like 2 weeks, and then so you get a little like nice treat basically.
And then we're also doing a partnership with Chipotle, so if you go down to Chipotle, we're doing it December 8th, between 4 and 8, then part of the money you spend on your meal goes back to the school. Yeah, and then in February, we have our homecoming dance, which is usually planned by the sophomores, so we've got them started going on that. We don't have a date for that yet, but we're looking to like associate a charity with that. Yeah.
So we've looked into the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation and the American Kidney Fund so far.
And then we started designing senior shirts, and then we put out the link for people to buy online. We sent out an interest form for senior parking spots to see if people would want to paint them, and so far the responses look like we will. And then we're planning for senior sunrise probably the first week of December as a little senior event.
So for prom, it's the juniors that are planning it. So basically, we signed the contract with the venue to purchase it, and it's going to be Legacy Ballroom, and the DJ just sent the venue sent the security deposit. So, yeah.
That's a pretty thorough update. Normally we get like what's happening next month. You guys gave us almost all the rest of the school year, so thank you so much.
That was a wonderful
They're
presentation.
seniors. And feel free, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. Next up, we have Jason Zackrow presenting on the National High School Barbecue Week. I was looking through what we got in our board packets. There's a lot of information here,
I gotta
man.
make this short and brief. So I found out, first of all, I'm Jason Zackrow. I'm your culinary arts and business teacher at the high school. I think I've met most of you in some way, shape, or form. And I found out about this really about 6 months ago, and figured since I'm starting a new teaching job, there's no chapters in Arizona, I'm trying to get started here. Tried to have 2 meetings so far, no one's shown up, but I'm just gonna keep pushing through. So we definitely need to get the word out there more. And the goal is to get students involved in basically a team sport that is really open for everybody. And the things they can learn will be community service, leadership, problem solving, time management, as well as have the chance to compete at both the state and national level. And we do have the rights to hold the state title here for 2 years. So any teams that want to compete have to very much pay us to be here. So that state championship is scheduled for April 30th, 2022. It has to be on the school grounds, so probably the high school parking lot, but I'm already working with Mr. Hartman and Mr. Wynn to plan those facilities. So like I said, the goal is just to also help put Fountain Hills on the map and bring back some of our enrollments. And once we can get these kids to understand what the barbecue is about, plus the barbecue is it's true American cooking at its point. And I'm going to be doing a whole American regional unit on barbecue, or a whole American regional unit in the 3rd and 4th quarter for the culinary program, and a lot of that's going to be barbecue because we have 11 different types in the states, might as well learn about most of them. So the goals are to just get the students involved with the community, partner with a lot of places in the community. I know we have a new barbecue restaurant in town as well, so I'm going to start talking with them as soon as we get our student interest up. So I'm just going to keep pushing for those meetings. But we said so far it's been a seamless process pretty much. I am in touch with the national director almost every day. We talk on things, and I just want to bring this to Arizona and help get it started. And like I said, if we can make our culinary program one of the premier ones in the state, we can probably keep students here. And that's one of the goals that I have, plus a lot more. So, but barbecue, I mean, who doesn't love it? And the fact that we could do it here, and we could also work with other student organizations and help split the profits between them. We said partner with communities, we can do catering and things like that. And I know Dr. Glass mentioned quite a few meetings ago the kitchen at Fort Peaks is hopefully going to be a year 2 kitchen, and our main catering kitchen. I know there's a lot on the table with that, and I fully get it, but I think the district's been very supportive so far, and I thank you for that. And we can pretty much turn that room over in the C building into kind of half culinary kind of / half homemaker. We're making it work, it's coming along. The kids are learning a lot, but this is what I want to really make my mark and my legacy here, as well as, like I said, get our enrollment back up and do what's best for the students. So that's really the only updates I have right now. Like I said, I'm just going to keep pushing through, and we'll just keep trying to grow.
Awesome. I think it's really exciting, and we appreciate that you're here driving these initiatives. Does anybody else have any questions?
How many culinary students do you have?
60
Oh, wow.
through 3 classes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you need help talking to the new barbecue people, just give me, happy to help you
Yeah,
get in
I
there.
would love to have people help out, because we can have mentors come into the community. Once again, we have to actually, I only need a minimum of 5 students,
Yeah.
but that's our max for a team.
Okay.
We can have as many teams as we want.
Got it.
It's open to everybody, because for those who may not be more athletically inclined, this can be something they could excel in. And it started at a small school in Texas. Texas is of course the biggest home for it, but they've got like 8 state qualifiers going. So just the fact we have a chance to hold it here for 2 years and raise some money for our programs. And my ultimate goal is to have our culinary and business programs be self-funding.
Yes.
And this could be part of that.
Absolutely.
So,
Awesome.
Well, the bachelors would be great people for you to talk to. So.
yeah, I've already been down there once to eat. I'm gonna go back and talk to them probably next week.
Yeah.
And just, 'cause I know they do Texas barbecue, we'll still see how
They're big Fountain Hills Unified supporters. Their
Good.
kid went here, so.
good.
It's
So,
great.
so far, so good. We'll just keep pushing.
And I really enjoyed reading all that stuff about it in the board packet.
It's a lot, I know,
It was, but
but yeah, it's.
it was really interesting, and it teaches, the
Teaches everything. At a minimum, the kids learn how to barbecue and be a life skill, just
Yeah.
like with culinary. So, they could take place of that at the July 4th event or something, but
No, they can make a barbecue for all of us.
like as we get going, I do have plans to work with Mr. Hartman to do certain things for certain days, like, I actually, like, just outside barbecue, like what our culinary students did, little quick bread loaves for some of our staff at the high school. So we did like 31 loaves, and almost, we had 3 that were left. So we're definitely getting them started.
I would say make sure that families at the high school get this information, because it might take a little nudge for
Yeah.
the
I
family
think
to
I'm right.
remind their kid that it would be a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna send out an email through the Lincoln Power School to all the culinary parents just to help kind of push it, 'cause I wanna get this going. If we don't have it by December, unfortunately, we can't have teams, we
Yeah.
gotta get it pushing, but any community involvement could help. And, yeah, like the flyer that was in there was actually designed by one of our students in 5th hour.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say try to get it out to all of the high school students, because there may be students who didn't take the leap into the culinary class, but
Absolutely.
would this,
Absolutely.
would be a great entry for them.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna keep pushing, like you said, and admin's been supportive, superintendent class been real supportive, and the community's been supportive so far, so definitely, it's worth the 45-minute drive I do every day to come up here and teach.
And there's a lot of parents, men especially, that think they're the best in the world,
Of course.
that their kids would probably legacy.
Absolutely. We'll absolutely do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the FHUSD state qualifiers. Superintendent Glass, do you have anything additional to cue this up for us?
Ms. Wynn is going to come up and do the introductions and get us going on this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. My name is Evelyn Wynn. I'm the athletic director at the high school and the middle school. We're here, like Dr. Glass said, to recognize our state qualifiers for cross country and swim. Swim competed last weekend, so we actually have some place winners that Coach will give you more detail on, and cross is coming up this weekend. So we're just super proud. We're really excited, and we're just happy to recognize them in a public way. So I'm gonna pass it over to Coach Goodman first, talk about cross country, and then we'll have Coach Schultz come up. Okay? Great.
Not about me. I'm Nick Goodman, the cross-country coach, and I want to introduce Tyler Irvine, Violet, and Aaron Hooley, who both qualified for the state championship. First time that Fountain Hills has had anyone represented at the state championship in many years since I've been the cross-country coach. Erin, I'll give you a little summary of what happened for each of them. At sectionals last week, Erin won overall, so she is the sectional champion, so she can claim that. Tyler got 14th overall male, which gave him a qualifying spot to state. So they both legitimately worked hard and earned those spots to represent Fountain Hills. Erin is going into state championship, ranked 10th overall in the Division III state, so she's got a little bit of pressure on her to hold that. And Tyler has a good ranking as well, and so they both should have great performances this year. Overall, the team was very successful, the cross-country team. We had 5 girls and 7 boys, so we barely had the cutoff to make a team that could qualify for state. The girls missed it by 7 points, or about 3 seconds, with 2 freshmen and 3 sophomores, and it's pretty incredible with a 5-person team, and you're allowed a maximum of 7. So great accomplishment for the girls. It was such a young program, so if they continue to work hard, there's no doubt in my mind that they will make it as a team next year to qualify for state, which would be great for the Fountain Hills community. And the boys were 1 place off from qualifying as a 7-person team, very close as well, and so no doubt that they will have that qualification next year if the boys continue to work hard. So great accomplishment for both of these individuals and the team, the boys and the girls team together.
Where's state from?
State is going to be at Cave Creek Golf Course, 8:30 and 9 o'clock this Saturday.
Best of luck to you.
We have some certificates from you. Then we'd love to get a quick photo with just the cross country, and then we'll do swim, and then we'll get a photo of all of our state qualifiers right now together. So congratulations. Thank you.
Where's your certificate then?
Yeah,
Swim.
Bring my notes because I don't want to miss anything. Thank you so much for having our swimmers and our cross-country runners here today. It means a lot to them. They work very, very hard. I know we practice in the morning at 5:30 before school, as well as Mr. Goodman's cross-country runners. So it's quite a dedication that these kids, they go to school with wet hair and all this stuff in my sport, but thank you so much. We had 4 invitational meets that we had a chance to qualify at, and we had 2 people, Grace Clark and Gunnar Wise, that were able to qualify this year. They did an amazing job. Gunnar, who's a junior, has competed in 2 events, the 50 freestyle and the 100 breaststroke. He swam really well. It was a 2-day meet, so you had to go Friday for the preliminaries and then for finals on Saturday. Going in on Friday, Gunnar ended up dropping a 2nd and a half in a 50 freestyle, and that's like unheard of if you know anything about like track and field and sprints. You don't just drop that much time. So very impressive swims for him on Friday, and got him into the top 8 position. So. And that's where you can get into the medals. But, and then again came back and swam on Saturday and ended up 8th overall. So that's amazing. He also dropped 3 seconds on his 100 breaststroke time, set a new school record. So we just had, it was very, very good meet for Gunnar. He's not only, an athlete, he also goes to EVIT. He's studying computer science and is a scholar, I call it a scholar athlete for us because he has good enough GPA. So, awesome job. Appreciate it. You've already met Grace Clark. She is the Stugo president, and she has qualified every year since she's been in swim since freshman year to go to states. So that's pretty impressive. She also qualified in the 200 IM and the 100 backstroke. She ended up dropping 4 seconds on Saturday to compete again on Friday to compete Saturday, and finished 13th in state in that event. didn't quite make the cut in the backstroke, but did move from 22nd to 20th. So anytime you have movement upward, it's always a good thing. Grace is also a scholar athlete with a GPA of a 4.4.
Wow.
So to do all these things and be involved in your school, it's just nice that they get this recognition. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Full disclosure, Xander's my student.
Ready?
Thank you. All right, and let's get the whole group back up so we can get the whole group, yes.
Maybe we can have a move over here so we have the wall as the background. Not the great looking people in the audience.
I'm just gonna cut them out.
Yeah, parents, feel free to come up, get photos.
Photos of your kids.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. All right.
You don't have to give at 5:30 tomorrow because we gave you the day off.
Okay, continuing on with the informational reports, we have site council minutes on pages 111 through 118. Student activity auxiliary accounts are on pages 119 through 125. The unaudited financial report is on pages 126 and 127. And then current enrollment and withdrawal numbers are on pages 128 through 129. Are there any questions or comments on any of these reports? Doesn't sound like it. All right.
I could comment on just the reports.
Yeah, if you have a comment, come up,
If
Mrs.
that's
King.
okay. Because I just want to make sure, sometimes I hear certain comments and I wonder if maybe, I know that I'm still kind of trying to find a good reporting look that will make sense to everyone.
And I noticed the look was a little bit different. They were
Right,
easy to
so
read.
Trying
Thank
to
you.
get there. I understand that a month or two ago, there was a question about, well, what's going on with maintenance and operations? So on your report that I prepared for you regarding just, I believe that Dr. Allen had called it the unaudited financial report. So what I did is I have it all set up in Excel, and your first page, I know I preach and preach and preach on the USFR. That's exactly how this is all spread out. It's spread out based on M&O fund, which is your 001 code. Then the second element of a USFR coding is the program number, and in this case, it starts off with the regular education, which just means basically anything and everything we can't code into anything specific goes into program 100. And again, this is the maintenance and operation fund. The second portion has your the funding that is specific to special education. Then we've got your CTE programs. Now I want you to notice, right now, I don't have a budget set aside for them in M&O, but there is money. We know that there's money, and we are working on the first budget revision, which will be in December. So I think we only have one meeting in December, so that will be the lucky day. And I will arrive half asleep from all the work I have to do between now and then, but it'll be done. Anyway, pupil transportation, that is under program number 400. Then under that, still in the maintenance and operation fund, now we've broken it down into some more smaller programs, but still very important programs. We've got the K through 3 reading. We've got the curricular activities is considered 610. That's basically extracurricular that is not part of your 7-hour day in school. Then you've got your school-sponsored athletics, and then you have other auxiliary, which at this time we really don't have anything going on in that arena. Now, when you move to the next page and you see the other funds, because I couldn't think of another way to word it, because it's literally the other funds. You got M&O, then you got your capital, you've got your classroom site fund, which they changed, the legislature changed it so that now the classroom site fund does not have to be split out into 3. It was the board's decision to keep it as 3, which is fine, because that's what we've been doing for years at this district, so it's still there. And those are your fund numbers. So you've got your classroom site fund, and it's broken out by the 3 different funds that have been used. So 20% to 11, 40% to 12, and 40% to 13. Then under that, you've got your federal and state funds. So your federal funds, the numbering will always fall under a fund number between 100 and 399, always. Anything outside of that, it's probably not federal. If it's state money, it's coming in somewhere in the 400s, from 400 to 499. So you've got all that set up there. Those are the grants that Superintendent Glass works very hard to keep up on. Under that, we've got cash-controlled funds. We've got your joint technology education. In the past, it was funded through the lease with EBIT. Now, it is our CTE base. Okay, so that's why you're not seeing much on CTE in M&O. Then you've got your civic center, which includes the 4 peak leases. You've got your community school, which includes our preschool. Auxiliary operations, when kids are paying for student ID or they're paying for PE uniforms or something like that. Lab fees, things like that. It's going into auxiliary operations, unless the parent has indicated that it is a tax credit contribution and it is an eligible activity, then that money has to be put into Fund 526. For gifts and donations, these are all set up by the USFR, these fund numbers. Gifts and donations belong in 530, student activities belong in 850. So now you've got that. So then what do? Well, once we've got the cash and we got to break it down into all these different activities, if you look at your high school one, that's going to be the one with the most examples. So I just want you to understand, again, still trying to figure out what's going to give you the best information in the most simple manner. And this has been broken out by the activity and then underneath by the fund. Now, why did I do it this way? Because these are all cash controlled. So a budget controlled, we can go upside down. Cash controlled, we can't go upside down. But here's the deal. If you refer back to the bottom of the other funds where you see the cash controlled accounts, you can see the total of the auxiliary, the total of the student activities, and the total of the tax credit contribution. That's what's in that cash controlled account. You have a joint account with your partner? Okay, that's your balance. Then, if you follow Mr. Ramsey's idea of keeping cash in a bunch of different envelopes so that you don't run out of money from paycheck to paycheck, okay, that's what we have here. We're just trying to make sure we're not running out of money, plus we're trying to figure out a way to make sure that we're giving reports to coaches, to sponsors, to everyone about how much it actually costs. What does it cost to run football? What does it cost to run baseball? Okay, well, let's look at that. But what I want you to look at, and the reason why I kind of wanted to step up and kind of say something is I've had some concerns about negatives. Well, this grade line is the actual activity. Underneath it are the funds. If I'm looking at the cash controlled totals and I see that the cash controlled total's not upside down, I'm not going to worry too much about whether this particular one might be upside down. Why? Because I know very well that if I could just have someone from Stugo sign something that says on a student activity form that the students have met and have agreed that their fundraising money can be used to pay for this or that, then I can get the money moved from the student activity up to auxiliary. I also know that I've got about 3 different spreadsheets that I need to review on where tax credit contributions have been assigned to one person or another, and then I have to decide, okay, well, is it more than 2 years old? Is the student still here? How specific was it in the thing? So anyway, there's room to move, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that so you weren't panicked when you saw this, and I felt like maybe if I could just take a few minutes of your time to help explain what you were seeing on the reports, and if you would prefer to see them in a different manner, please let me know. I'm using a simple pivot table, so just let me know how you want it.
That is good information.
Yeah.
Was it
I just
helpful
learned
so that you knew what you were looking
yes,
at?
this is
And how to
very
compare the
simple.
different reports?
Yeah.
Very
No,
simple.
This is very
Okay.
helpful.
I
This is a good
love
format.
this new layout. Yes, I think this is great.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
really easy to identify like line items
Yes.
because of the shading of, you know, and like the breakout of the table and everything. So that was very helpful, and really appreciate your diligence in working to go back through years worth of records to reconcile and get things cleaned up and squared away.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate you. Yes. Any other questions or comments on either the budget information or financial reports, I should say, enrollment numbers, et cetera? Then we'll move on to public comment. Yep, I do have one public comment.
I know, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. This is the time for the public to comment, okay? Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comments made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Complaints about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, capital H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date.
All right, and we have one public comment person, and that is Madison Reed. I'm glad we were able to get to you before you had to go.
Before we start, can I actually just talk a little candidly with you guys for a minute?
No.
Well, that, okay.
No.
I guess I'll change my public comment to that then, what I was gonna talk about, because it's a solution, it's an offer for a solution, because I think that one of the reasons that you're losing parents coming here and talking to you is because they feel like it doesn't do anything. And I think that a good solution for that would be setting up a meeting, even if it's not, once a month, maybe if it's once a quarter, where parents could come with prepared questions and kind of expect a little bit of a discussion. Last week, you guys talked about how you guys like this setup so much better for you guys just as a board, because it allows for a candid and genuine discussion between you guys. And then you also mentioned, that you guys have coffee with Kelly, because that's a good way to get to know who you're working with outside of just this setting. I don't think that there's an option for coffee with Kelly with the parents, and I don't think that there's really an open space for discussion with you guys, and so it really doesn't feel like we're here able to come with solutions. We have 3 minutes, and honestly, when I was preparing my statements for tonight, I had so many notes, and I'm like, am I supposed to focus on the problems that I see, or am I supposed to focus on solutions that I have for those problems? And it's hard not to be able to do both. Now with the extra time, we'll go into what I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to talk about how the public education system has become really corrupt. Something with good intention is now a source of manipulation for anyone that depends on it. How did this happen? Poor political leadership, an uninvolved community, and a lot of greedy people manipulating the system and taking money from the very thing they promote, the education of our youth. This happens through the federalization of education, as well as all of these organizations that we've somehow become so tied up with that we feel like they are necessary. It was literally said at the last meeting, our hands are tied when it comes to certain policies and regulations discussed. And yes, I'm referring to the ASBA. Chandler School District recently voted to sever ties with the National School Board Association and declined to pay the dues, which was over $8,500. I think that's a good start. I'd encourage our board to do the same if we are affiliated with them. I think the problem that's causing most of this is the disconnected financing that we have, which always leads to financial waste. It's a truth often learned through business ownership that the further you are from the money, the more likely there is to be waste. Right now, we are so far removed from the district's financing. How is it that your hands are tied by the government and these organizations when it's our money and our kids? I would challenge you today to look at ways to take back control and take a stand for freedom while also getting more money to serve our district and our students. The concern that was expressed last week, or last meeting, with the budget not passing was that we would lose district funding and lose the district altogether. Don't you see that happening anyway? I've been meeting with a homeschool group that established themselves largely in response to the gradual manipulation of the public education system, and they keep growing. Micro schools are popping up, and people who truly put their children's education first will find ways not to need the public system, and you'll lose funding anyway. Thank you.
Madison, before you walk away, you need to research the open meeting law. And I think once you understand the open meeting law, you'll understand why we can't answer your questions and why there's no coffee with the board. It's not an option, it's a law.
Okay.
We're bound to it by the government. And so there are things that we have to follow, whether we like it or not. We can have
that's
open.
what I'm talking about. But there was one meeting where you guys talked about possible discussion.
We can have
and answering
discussion amongst
questions.
ourselves in a work study, but to have discussion with the public, it has to be on an agenda. So unless
Okay.
there's something on an agenda, we cannot have an open discussion, even during a work study session with the public.
How do we
So-
get it on the agenda?
Well, you'll have to talk to Superintendent Glass,
Okay.
but I really would like you to research that. I think it would hopefully answer a lot of questions of why things are done the way they're done. And when our hands are tied, it's not that we don't want to hear you, it's that we can't have an open discussion. So please research that law.
Okay.
And you should probably reach out to John Kavanaugh and our state representatives.
I
because they're the
am,
ones-
trust me, I'm writing
they're
letters
the
to
ones-
everybody. And I'm supporting the bill by Thomas Massey to abolish the U.S. Department of Education.
Well, enjoy.
There's
home-
lots of
you
really
should
good
enjoy
things.
it. It's
There's
gonna be
really good
awesome.
things out there. Yeah.
This is good stuff. We'll keep doing what we're doing.
Yes.
All right, next we have the consent agenda. That includes accounts payable vouchers on pages 131 through 146, payroll vouchers 147 through 154, personnel action report on page 155, approval of the minutes for October 6th, 2021, business meeting, and the October 27th, 2021 work study session. Those are on pages 156 through 169.
Yes. Not that I don't love both of these people, but how do we have two head coaches for cross-country at the middle school?
Is one supposed to be a head and one's supposed to be an assistant?
I would think so. Mr. Markle, do you know the answer to that? Two head coaches at the middle school?
Yeah, Mary McDonald is the head coach and Steph helps her out.
Then she would not be the head coach,
Maybe
because the
assistant.
stipend would be different.
From what I've been told, she's the head coach of the middle school team. which is why
It says both of them are the head coach of the middle school team.
So can we change that to assistant? That's what I thought it was, that was the case with staff.
Good catch.
Yes, thank you.
I thought they split it or something.
I don't know, and I just, stipend is for one head coach. We don't have stipends for two head coaches. There's no team that we have two head coaches for.
Unless they split it over the year, we have that. They could split the stipend too.
Well, that would have to go through Mr. Merkel. That would have had to be approved to split their stipend. So if nobody seems to know about it. So if you find that it's different, please feel free to bring it back to us. But for right now, I can't see having two head coaches.
Correct.
So do we want to approve the consent agenda with a comment about the head coach assignments for cross-country at the middle school not being approved?
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the caveat that there is one head coach at Fountain Hills Middle School for cross-country and an assistant coach, unless that's found to be different.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item. Action items, starting with policy advisories, 712 through 715. This is our second reading. The policy advisories begin on page 170. Superintendent Glass, do you have anything additional to add about these policy advisories?
I do not.
Alright. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the updated policies.
I will second. We have a motion and a second to approve the updated policies 712 through 715. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, so that motion passes. This packet is so long, it's taken me.
I know.
Like even when I flip to my thumbnails, it takes me forever to
I
scroll
know, and then
through.
I keep closing it by accident. Where's Vinny?
I know, right? All right, next we have our second reading of Regulation DD-R. That begins on page 189. Any questions or comments? And then this, again, is the regulation related to the requirement for federal grants to keep the record of time and effort reporting. Which makes a lot of sense to me. Yes. So I will go ahead and move that we approve Regulation DDR.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed, motion carries, and I forgot to say aye, but I do vote in favor of that.
She said aye.
I was scrolling.
It was a soft one.
All right, then we have our student trip to Greece, which we had tabled in our last meeting. We have since received some of the additional information that we had asked for, or not necessarily information, but we had asked that parents be informed about the use of tax credits and what happens with their money if they pay a portion of their student's trip with the tax credit. So we had submitted to us as an addendum a document that will go to the parents as essentially like an agreement, a waiver, saying that they understand that if they pay with the tax credit, this is how that gets applied, that they can't get refunds. If they do, want to seek a refund under specific circumstances, when they would be able to approach EF Tours to get that refund, etc. Yes?
I thought I downloaded it. I do not see it. I am very hesitant about using tax credits for this, and my big reason why is people use tax credits to go to Japan. It gets canceled, which it should have for various reasons. All of those kids that paid, the money was paid to the school, we paid EF Tours, those kids now all have vouchers to take a trip. So our tax credit money went through a third party and then got funneled back right to the parent. And it's clearly a loophole, but to me that just does not seem, it does not seem legal to me. I want to support these trips, but I cannot do it right now with the tax dollars because of the potential for something being canceled when it's already been paid to a third party who then gives the money back to families. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So I'm not opposed to the Greece trip. I am opposed to allowing tax dollars to be used for it because of that reason, unless it stays at the school. But the minute we pay someone outside,
Yeah.
to me, is not a
If
tax
those
credit.
outsiders would then, yes, refund any dollars. I think it's different if it's like, when the money gets sent to EF Tours, the only thing that can be done is that the student can take a different trip.
And that's what happens. They can't get the money back.
Yeah.
They don't get cash in
But
their
they
pocket.
still get
They get a voucher to go on another trip.
I
But
just-
they can't get cash in their pocket.
I think that's the biggest liability here, is that if somebody got cash in their pocket, then it's almost like a money laundering thing, right?
Yeah.
They've already taken the advantage of the tax.
Right, so then you should not legally get that money back. Yes?
I guess, we didn't have a lot of this back in my day, but why are we involved as a district at all?
Because they're educational tours run through clubs at our district with the intent of education, depending on which trip it is. And so we collect the tax credits it's like funding like an international field trip.
I know, but we could solve the problem with the tax credit by not getting involved. If a student and faculty member or a parent want to take kids, EF does a good job of dealing with that. Why are we even involved?
Because some kids wouldn't be able to go if they couldn't use tax credits.
Well, then they can. I mean, there are other ways to earn money. I'm just saying, to your point, we're always going to have liability if we're involved. I know that the company has a huge liability and they take really good care of everybody that goes. But I see no reason for the students to have to deal with us at all. If they contract directly with EF and we have a faculty member or a parent that wants to coordinate that, that's fine. But keeping us involved, to me, as you said, just opens the door to all kinds of problems we don't need.
Well, and I do have a little concern, if I can add, that I understand by asking some questions that we might be letting students from other districts travel with our students.
It's open to anybody.
So then, are we responsible, since we're organizing the trip, for those other students? Like, what's our responsibility?
Yeah, as we get smaller, that's going to become more of an issue.
Right.
And once again, they do a great job. So I see absolutely no reason that the district, other than we can say, nice, going and have a good time and hopefully learn something in the process, but we don't require any reports when they get done, or get graded. So I just find it difficult to even figure out why we were involved in the first place, other than we were doing the tax credit thing. But if we're not going to do that anymore, then why are we involved?
Yeah, if you're not going to let them use tax credits, then there's no reason for the school district to be involved. But, the Fort McDowell, hosts a couple of those kids that go. They usually find a way for them to go. It's open to, it's open, I think it's 2 years, anybody who's 2 years out of the school district. There are some guidelines there,
Are those our guidelines, or?
No.
Yeah.
Or at least they were. So, I don't know. I mean, my kids have been on both my kids have been on these trips, so.
They're good trips. I encourage parents to put that together and the kids to put it together, quite frankly. I just don't see the advantage of a district, whether it's ours or anybody else's for that matter, having to be involved unless it was for the tax credit. And if we're not doing that anymore, then.
Well, we haven't said we're not doing that. We just said we're not giving it back if the trip gets canceled.
I got the feeling that's a trend.
Well, we can't put it back though.
We can't,
We
and
can't.
that's
We're
the document
allowed
that
to do
Luke
that.
sent, is that he did what he was requested, and that was to come up with a document that clearly stated, if the trip gets canceled, we are not liable for that money
Yeah,
in any way, shape, or form.
right.
I think the one outstanding item though is, whether it, is possible for them to get, because this document says, once the money is paid to EF Tours, we cannot refund your money, the school district, whether it be tax credit or cash check. You must receive your refund from EF Tours.
Right, but you have
So
to sign
then-
documents with EF Tours that says they only refund your money in a voucher. So
Right.
we're not the only paperwork that they have to sign.
Right.
There's a lot
I
of
just
paperwork
wanna
they
make
sign
sure
with EF Tours.
that it wouldn't be possible for them to receive cash back from EF Tours.
The only way you get any cash back is if you have the insurance policy that you bought separately, and that's not even necessarily like, it doesn't necessarily refund your trip. It's like if your flight was delayed, they had to change flights and there's an additional cost, then the insurance pays it,
Will
or if
cover
your
that.
luggage gets damaged, something like that. Like, when the kids flew to Spain, they were supposed to be on Delta, and Delta canceled their flight, and the next thing they knew, they had to hurry up to another part of the airport to get on a different flight. And so we got I don't know, $250 or something
Like a
as like an inconvenience fee for those of us that bought the insurance.
But you don't have to buy insurance.
You don't have
So
to,
just
no.
that.
Nope, it's optional. I think it's $99, just like any trip you take right now or concert tickets that you buy, you have the option of paying a fee for insurance.
I feel personally a little stuck at this point in time because it's my understanding that some of the, activities for the Greece trip in terms of, getting students to sign up and potentially even taking some tax credit dollars has already happened based on past precedent, right? And so then I don't want to put any of our staff or any of our students in a bad position where we're like, no, we're not gonna do this now that they've already started planning. But I don't think that this is something that we want to continue to do the way it's been done in the past moving forward. So I would be willing to say, with the additional form regarding tax credits, that we will, approve the Greece trip at this point in time, but that we need to have a larger discussion about whether we feel like the district overall should be supporting these types of trips when there's, students from outside schools or who have already graduated and are, adults traveling with our students. If those are the types of activities that we want to support as a district. While they do offer our students cultural and educational benefits, we might have to consider kind of closing those up a little bit and making them more restrictive as far as who can attend if they're going to be school-sponsored events.
And just so you're aware, like, they have not turned money in yet.
Okay.
The sponsor is inappropriately holding the money, which they should not be doing. So no money has been turned in to the district office yet.
But kids have signed up for it.
Yes. And have kind of made plans in terms of how they're gonna finance their trip based on,
Obviously,
past presidents.
I mean, literally, Germany just said that they're looking, with the increase in their COVID cases, they're looking at more restrictive measures, so we'll see. But I'm willing to make a motion, so. I move that we approve the Greece trip based on the new information that was provided regarding the tax credit dollars.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll see if the students are going to Greece.
But I agree with you. I think it's a discussion that needs to probably happen.
Yeah, but we came too late. So, I mean, I don't want to put those kids and everybody else into jeopardy, but let's just hope everybody's okay and nobody asks for money back.
Right, and our next and last action item on the agenda is superintendent goals. Those are on pages 191 through 193. Superintendent Glass, take it away.
So I developed these goals based on your summer activities. Some are items to complete to help meet your goals that you have developed. So the first one is to champion the unified learning environment that engages students and families in our community. So I established that will facilitate committees, much like we had last year, and had really great success with, to help reinforce the vision of unification of our district. The second one is the development and facilitation of Pbis, implementation of beyond textbooks and the system of assessments to continue to build the unified district. The policy manual, this is, it's not minor, but it will include all of the regulations that we currently do not have, where it says the superintendent will develop these regulations, and there are none. I always go and look for them, but they're not there. So, and then number 4 is to improve teacher and staff retention and recruitment. And so there are some things that we are already doing, but we want to continue to keep the focus on teacher retention and staff recruitment. I actually did not add that program that we discussed with the ESSER funds in here, but I can add that.
The Well Styles program?
No,
Or the-
Well Styles is in here for that Arizona teacher residency
yes,
program.
Yes.
Okay, wait, am I missing goal 4?
It's not in the packet that we have.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Goal
there's
4
no
is not
4.
No, underneath
Superintendent.
superintendent
So
goal number 1, there's no
it's
point
just
number 4.
1, 2, and 3.
Oh, then you're missing it, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
I sent you a new copy.
I have, that's what I have.
Oh, that's what you have?
I opened the updated packet, that's what I have. No, I only see 1, 2, and 3.
I
Under
don't-
goal 1.
I
Number
don't
one.
think, I don't think the goals went into the updated packet. I think that came separately, maybe? I don't know, I'd have to look back in my email, I apologize.
No, I mean, I have the email that says updated board packet.
Okay.
And it had the minutes and the updated packet. That's what I have.
Okay.
So, but I only have 1, 2, and 3.
See, good, that's all I have to do. We'll just scribble it in on our iPad.
So I have goal 2, which is support individualized and equitable opportunities for students to reach their maximum potential. That is, again, the implementation of beyond textbooks. And I'll help support that by, I help provide professional development and information for our staff. The implementation of the system of assessments that we have, facilitating professional development. Like today, I did an AVID professional development so that Mr. Hartman, Mr. Alexander, and Ms. Heron can now use the AVID modules to provide professional development for all of our staff. So I do those types of things, develop a plan to improve the equitable education opportunities for children, to include dual and concurrent enrollment, AP and honors, activities, athletics, academic services, and programs for all students like AVID, CTE, and again, dual and concurrent enrollment. There are several others. To support goal 3, which is to provide a safe and secure environment for students. I'll continue to support and provide guidance and further implementation of Pbis across all campuses. Right now I have Mr. Markle, I'm working with him as he's leading the ADE group, that cohort that we're working through the grant with ADE. We're working to get Pbis really solidified for our students and our staff. Facilitate the development of Tier 2 and 3 Pbis supports. Provide priorities from the Gordian facility audit in the area of safety for all of our stakeholders. And update the volunteer processes for background checks as well as that volunteer handbook, because we really do want volunteers back in our schools. We really do, and we really need them. So goal 4 is, the governing board's goal is to consistently maintain responsible stewardship of the district funds and resources. So my goals or my objectives are to continue to supervise the correction and improvement of the processes and procedures in human resources, the business office, facilities and maintenance, and the school sites. Establish standard operating procedures for human resources, the business office, facilities and maintenance, technology, and then begin conversations regarding the viability of all FHUSD facilities to include Four Peaks. Provide guidance and information regarding the possible improvement of facilities to include staff housing. Prioritize the Gordian Facilities Audit Report to begin improvement, discussion regarding capital bond improvements, and applications to the School Facilities Board, and then begin development and implementation of the Budget 101 for stakeholders at all levels. And then goal number 5, which is to promote and advance the district's success and excellence. establish the communication committee to assist with the promotion of FHUSD, continue with community involvement activities to promote our district, and then establish our governing board communication meetings with times and opportunities for us to share information. Those are my 5 goals, or objectives to meet your goals.
Any questions or comments on these? Or, you know, suggested edits, anything that anybody would like to see added, changed, etc.?
Of course.
Yeah, so this was my next question, but go ahead, you're gonna do it.
No, I just think, you know, you've heard me say it before, I just think these have to be measurable in some
Yes.
way. You know, it's a to-do list, and that's not necessarily bad, but to what end? And our goals are just as guilty of not having measurability as anything else. So we really have the data to show that all this effort is producing the results we're looking for. So I guess my big question I've asked before, what data have we, or what evidence do we have that we can rely on to see if all of the efforts, not just the superintendents, but the district as a whole, is making toward our goal? And I'll stop there because I can make a sermon out of this for an hour.
So I really feel like our student achievement data will be able to share. Our student achievement data will be able to share our student behavior data through Panorama, through the use of SWIS, which is our data tracking system from ADE for Pbis. So there are going to be a lot of avenues to share how this is improving, and when it's not improving, that's part of the process with our grant from ADE, but it should also be very much part of our process of this didn't work, so now what are we going to do? So we are really working through the problem-solving process and adjusting and monitoring as we implement these systems. I think that what's important for us to understand is that not only the state assessments are different, but our Move On When Reading assessment is different. For many of our staff, the use of Beyond Textbooks is very new. They're doing a great job, but it still is very new. And I feel like over the course of 3 to 5 years, which is how long it takes to implement change, and this is a huge change for some of our staff, I think that we'll be able to show evidence of growth and development of our students through a lot of these things. And of course, keeping our teachers and getting highly qualified teachers is going to be a benefit. But if there were other things that you would like for me to show you and as evidence, I'm happy to have that conversation.
Yes, these are activities to reach a goal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can help you with some of these, and I would also really highly suggest that some of these go down to each school, the school level. So implementation of Beyond Textbooks in all core subjects and use by staff for instruction. So, I mean, that information we should know at the high school, what teachers are using it, how many reteach sessions they have. I mean, to me, those are very quantifiable things that we can get. So, you know, looking at it very high level, but then drilling down to show progress. Like implementation, I mean, I get paid to do that for a living, to try to show implementation fidelity and all of that. So I think it's just showing progress towards some of these things, I think would be appropriate and measurable, as well as challenges. Like I don't want challenges to be hidden from us, because there are always there's always resistors, there's always
things just didn't go as smooth as you
Yeah.
thought. You did a PD session and you thought everybody got it,
Mhm.
and then 3 weeks later, you're like, I don't think people got it because they're not really following the process the way it
Yeah.
was intended, right? So,
Exactly, and to me, that is amazing growth, because you've recognized that you've hit a challenge and you figure out a way to sort of mitigate that challenge. So, you know, even facilitate professional development and use of instruction and assessments to provide remediation and intervention. Like, what then is happening at each of the schools? You know, your facilitation of it, you're not going in the classrooms and doing it, the teachers are. So what are the steps put into place to help teachers do that? And what does that look like? And what are challenges and things like that? I think that quantifiable metrics are great, but there's also going to be some narrative around some of these pieces, and I think that's okay too. Because I think you can make some of these quantifiable. And you're right, I mean, achievement data is much easier to make quantifiable. You know, facilitated development, the development of tier 2 and 3 Pbis supports for students and staff. Okay, what are the pieces? How are they being used? How are they being implemented? And, you know, have one of the Pbis people come in and talk to us. Perfect. So like that's where I think, you know, you're overseeing at this really high level, and you know, to have each of the schools and the principals and you know, sort of celebrate the successes that we do have toward meeting some of these. We can start creating metrics around them. So Dana and I can sit down one day and we can create a bunch of metrics.
I look forward to that. When we do, I'll support this.
So you're not going to support it because there's not a metric?
Well, no evidence of success or failure to me.
Well, she's not saying she's hit these goals. These are the goals that she's putting out there.
Well, I'm not saying it's her. I mean, we would bear responsibility for some of this measurement requirement ourselves. So, you know, I go back to the 10 years I was at college. We always had measurable goals. We spent numerous hours going through evidence on whether or not the board goals were met. And I just think we're at a position where we need to have that same level. And I've said it so many times, I'm not going to dwell on it.
yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you can say, okay, we expect, you know, to see 10% growth in this, or a reduction of this by, you know, 15 cases, or whatever it is. I think some of the challenges are that, for example, we didn't have beyond textbooks at every site for the last 3 years to then have measurable data from reteach and certain things. Pbis is a new initiative that we're trying to roll out, and while we do have discipline data from what we were doing previously, you're not comparing apples to apples then to see, like, year over year Pbis, did we have improvement? Because this is the first year of Pbis. So I think there are challenges to getting some of the data that we're asking for this year. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be requesting that data, like tell us, so how many referrals are going to the office on a monthly basis now that we've implemented Pbis? Are we seeing any improvement? Are we seeing spikes from, you know, 1 month to the next? So what's shifted and what's going on? Things like that. I agree with you, there are ways to put measurements in place. That is probably a larger conversation for us to have with Superintendent Glass to understand what tools are being used to collect data so that we could draw that out and present it in evidence of these items.
And I would also like to, you know, use this more dynamically. We should talk about this at every single one of our board meetings. Like what goals did you work on last? You know, because these are things that are continuing.
Yeah.
We shouldn't look at them right now.
And put them away. And
Yeah, yeah. You know, so then we'll have some information to start being able to set metrics and to change some of those.
And then instead of telling Superintendent Glass once or twice a year, well, this isn't what we were looking for, this is great, but we'd like this too, we can, if we're doing it piecemeal at every meeting, there's more of that continuous 360-degree feedback from all of us.
And we don't want to be accused, or should we even move the goalposts? I mean, there's a time frame here. But reviewing these on a regular basis is good for everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, what I've said to you many times is that so much work happens and nobody knows about. And I think sometimes you even sometimes forget to highlight the work that you've already done in some of these.
Yes.
That I think having this is something that we touch on every meeting, whether it's the business meeting or the work study meeting, I think will really help educate us in the community to what's happening.
Is there anything you'd like to see different, added, taken away?
Other than
Well,
having,
Other than that,
yeah, the data points, like what kind of data points would we associate with each of the items? But is there anything that you feel like is missing that didn't get touched on, or, you know, for example, under the Invite equitable opportunities, is there something else there that you want to see, or under safe and secure environment for students, et cetera?
Which Krista did just send us all updated one, so there's actually, you know, a 4 with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So we were missing quite a bit.
Yeah, and some of it, she really doesn't want to say, but this, the whole district doesn't know if we're going to put another capital override vote together.
Right.
So putting something, you know, on that is kind of, well, waste my time if you're not going to do it, you know, kind of situation. So I don't know that kind of level needs to be here, but I do think from, you know, on this bandwagon tonight, but we've got the ability to reallocate funding into some of these really important things, and that's a decision for the board to make.
I think they look good. I think it's a good starting point. I agree that, I think that maybe we need to add something to our agenda of, like, you know, goal overview or something that, you know, there's things that you do, you know, we're here almost every 2 weeks, so there's things you do in those 2 weeks that maybe, it, you know, things that you've done are attached to this goal. And so I don't have my board packet up anymore because I pulled up just the goal paper, but, you know, when we would approve things as a board, it used to have like these 4 lines at the bottom, and it was basically like student enrichment, you know, personnel, and it basically was attached to something, whatever we
So
were
it would be
approving.
like, check the box,
Right.
it falls under
It was
this category.
attached to something that was relevant in our goals.
On the cover sheet.
Kind,
Cover sheet.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying we have to do that again, but I'm just saying that, you know, when the board's getting information or you're giving your reports on what you've done, you know, things that have come up, it might be good, you know, based on goal 5, you know, these are some of the bullet points that I've worked on or that I'm implementing, something like that, to just, you know, like they said, to start that process of, okay, well, we see these things happening, now how do we measure the outcome of that? You know, so you've done this, this, and this, but what was the end result? What did it improve in our district? Just like when the board would approve something, it's like, we're doing this because it promotes academic achievement, or it was good for our personnel, or something, you know, that's my only recommendation, so. Sure. But as for your goals in general, I think for the short time that you've been here, there's been a lot of work, and so, like Nadia said, like, we've just now implemented beyond textbooks, you know, you're just now working on the policy handbook, there's no regulations for you to go back to. So unfortunately, your to-do list is still working to get to the point where we can start measuring what you're doing.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes. Yeah, and I am not at all adverse to using any type of metric to measure what we do. Part of Pbis, we use Swiss. We're using several other things to include Panorama to see, and our Power School data to determine what adjustments we need to make in our lessons that go to kids, what changes we need to make in our plan. And the same is true, like I look every single month at the Beyond Textbooks usage report. Who's using it, who's not using it. So, because that tells me a couple of things.
Tell us.
Not tell them.
But yeah, I mean, but to me, what's important about that, Kelly, is like what you do with that information, right? I bet that you then talk to the school principal and you come up with a plan and da-da-da-da. All of that is great things that should be part of our. Should be part of our.
He's getting
Sorry,
tired
not
back
shaking.
there.
Because once again, I mean, you know, using that feedback loop is so, so important. And I think that that is something that isn't always captured, that should be captured both for you to show progress, but then also to our community. That you're not just collecting it to collect it, you're collecting it to make meaningful decisions that ultimately impact our kids.
And next month, you're going to get information about the use of our assessment system. So STAR reading, IXL are beginnings of our assessment system. So where do kids start and where do we need to get them to? And so we'll be able to use that in conjunction. Chris has done a great job of tying IXL to Beyond Textbooks so that we all can see the connections and how teachers can use that to improve student learning. So there are a lot of things that I'll be able to, I'll probably be able to give you more data than you probably have had in a little while.
Well, but the groundwork has to be laid first.
Yes, it
and
does.
that's where I see you right now.
It
is
is.
laying the groundwork. Is that, you know, you can't measure something that's not there.
Right.
So until you put it there and start to build on it, it would be really difficult to, you know, for right now to say, hey, we want you to do this, because what we want you to do may not even exist.
Right, and I guess part of the issue with using, you can use it to measure me all day, I'm fine with it, but to measure our staff by student achievement when they are experiencing a lot of changes, they have some kids still at home, some kids still at school. There are a lot of different processes and procedures. I would never want our staff to feel like they're being judged when they're trying to make these improvements for students and in our community. So
I wouldn't ever put all of the eggs in one basket.
No.
And when it comes to evidence, you know the evidence. Unless we're involved in it, we don't know that much about the evidence. So at EVID, we're evaluated on our goals as teachers, and we have to supply the evidence to support our progress in those goals. And so and it works. A lot better than whether or not you're walking around the aisle too many times and not this aisle too many times. Back in my day, but so I just think I'm waiting to see your ideas for evidence. I mean, good or bad. I mean, let's face it, you can't be perfect. No one is. But I do hope that we're making progress in areas not just in student achievement, but in effective use of funding and all the things you got here. So if I would support it if there was just evidence that you were going to provide to us, and if I don't think this has to be necessarily a one-time a year. If you bring that to us again next month, I'll support it. Until then, not so much.
Well, I think we will go ahead and vote on this action. I will move that we approve the superintendent's goals for 2021, 2022.
And I seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And that was on that section. And just want to double check the agenda. Yes, all right. So future action, if you have an item that you'd like to see on a future board agenda, please reach out to Krista. Dates of upcoming meetings, we have on Wednesday, December 8th, an executive session at 5:30 p.m. followed by a business meeting at 6:30 p.m. And then Wednesday, January 12th, 2022, oh my goodness, we have a business meeting at 6:30 p.m. Both of those are here in the Learning Center. And with that, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Besides pushing it all the time?
You know, there's probably, yeah, probably.
I went to
Did you go through the wake screen?